Hi everyone, so this video has been put together just to give you some help and guidance with approaching unseen poetry, which is obviously a key bit in the GCSE exam and can seem quite intimidating and scary. The idea that you're not going to be able to prepare, you won't have had notes, your teacher won't have told you any ideas, it's going to be just you and the poem. So I'm just going to start with a few little things to help you with this, to give you some guidance, some things to have, a kind of procedure in place. And in secondary English SOS, there's actually a written guide, as well as some questions that you can work through for this. So my first thing is, stay calm in the unseen poetry. Remember, everyone's got the same poem. It's not just you. Everyone we have, if it's a difficult poem, everyone's going to be struggling with it. But you've got to find what you can. The idea is you just get out of it whatever you think you can. So start by looking at the ideas in the poem. Try and work out if there's a story. You can see a narrative developing through this. Think about the tone as well. Don't panic if there's gaps, if there's bits you don't understand. Get the overall picture as much as you can. What do you think it's about? Okay, and trust your gut instinct with this as well. What do you think? At the end of the day, there isn't really a right or wrong, as long as you can back it up with evidence from the text and explain it and analyse it effectively. Your ideas can't be wrong. So you've got to just not be scared and go for it with this one. And then, I've given you some pointers of things to start looking at. So one thing is form. Start looking at the form, and I'm going to show you in a separate bit of the video an example of me doing this. But count the number of lines. Particularly if you get like 14, then bingo. Because if you've got 14 lines, sonnet. Start thinking about sonnet straight away. Is this meant to be a sonnet? Is this parodying a sonnet, maybe? Is this a poem actually all about hating someone, but they've written it in the form of a sonnet? Is it meant to be an ironic thing? So look at the form, count the number of lines, and the rhyme scheme as well. Again, I'm going to demonstrate in a minute. If you're not sure how to do a rhyme scheme, I'm going to demo that. And then start looking at perspective. Who is telling the story? Who is talking to us? Does this poem have a speaker? Is the speaker the poet, or is it a character? Is this perhaps a dramatic monologue? Have they constructed the voice of a character to tell us the story? Another great place to start is the title. A lot of people forget about the title, but actually that's structure as well. If you're talking about the title, that's our first introduction, our first way into the story. So if we just pick an example like My Last Duchess, so straight away, even from the title, my position straight away. Last as well, so it implies, she probably maybe wasn't the first. She certainly isn't going to be the last. There's going to be more. That this duchess was part of a series of duchesses that this duke had. So always look at the title, get what you can out of the title as well. And then you start looking for the language. In this, think about your language devices. Again, in my secondary English SOS, there is like a grid of different things you can look for. But, think your teacher will be giving you a list. You maybe have like mnemonics to remember them, like things like Mr. Soap, for example. You're looking for metaphors, you're looking for similes. Can you find alliteration? Is there onomatopoeia going on? Personification? What can you find? What devices can you find? Your teacher will have been training you to spot these. And then you've got to think about the structure as well. Again, so this kind of links back to the story as well. How is our story being told? What does the poet start with? How do they end? How do they proceed to the ending of the poem? So again, going back to My Last Duchess, the structure, we start with him talking to the servant, explaining about the painting. Then he goes into his story, sort of rambling on, his sort of jealous ramblings about what happened with the Duchess. But then he ends going back to the servant, and he ends off by pointing out the other things in his art gallery. And it's like, well, actually, the Duchess was just one more thing in his art gallery, one more possession for him to show off, something that he owned. So have a look at the poem ends, how the poem ends as well. So what I'm going to do in part 2 of this video is actually talk you through an example, so you can see me working through an unseen poetry example. But the main thing I would say, with unseen poetry as well, practice. Yeah, you don't know what's coming up. You can't learn notes on a set poem for this. Practice, expose yourself to unseen poetry. I'm going to start trying to upload regularly in secondary English SOS. Try and start uploading some practice materials so we get a bit of a bank of practice together there. But another good tip I give students, if you're doing GCSE, say like you're doing the relationships cluster of poems, have a look at the other cluster, because there's normally at least one other, and use those for practice. So if you're doing relationships, use conflict as a practice for unseen, or vice versa as well. It's about finding out what you can, obviously practicing questions if you can, but also just reading them, making notes, practice annotating unseen poems. And I know obviously in the exam you will have to do comparisons, so I'm going to do comparison completely separately, but for today we're just focusing on how to get into an unseen poem. So I'll see you usually for part 2.